A few years ago, while working as a night security guard at a mall, I experienced something that still haunts me. Most nights, I'd sit in the CCTV room, watching the monitors, mostly just seeing empty hallways and occasional late-night shoppers. One night, I noticed two women enter an elevator on one of the screens. They were talking, laughing, nothing out of the ordinary. When they exited, the door stayed open a few seconds longer, and that's when I saw it. A figure appeared, small, like a young boy, standing still at the back of the elevator. He hadn't entered with the women. He just kind of appeared. He looked blurry, not quite solid, staring straight ahead. I rewound the footage multiple times, but every time it was the exact same thing. The woman entered alone and left alone, but after they were gone, the boy would appear, looking almost ghostly. I showed the video to my supervisor, hoping that he'd have an explanation, but he was just as shocked as I was. To this day, I'm not sure who or what I saw, but since then, every time I watch an empty elevator, I feel a shiver, wondering if I might see that boy again. One night, I was getting ready for my night shift at the hospital. I had to drive for about 20 minutes to reach my workplace, and I'd been having issues with my car starting up lately. It would make the strange clicking sound whenever I tried to turn it on. So, that night, I decided to record it with my phone to show the mechanic later. I stepped out into the driveway, phone in hand, already recording, as I approached the car. I opened the door, got in, and prepared the phone up against the dash to get the full startup sequence on video. I shut the door, took a breath, and turned the key. The car shook a bit. Then it finally started. As the headlights came on, I could see the front yard lit up through the windshield. And that's when I froze. In the yard, for just a second, the headlights captured something I hadn't expected at all. A figure standing still in the garden. It was a woman, faint and almost translucent, standing next to the bushes. She had long, disheveled hair, and her face looked shadowed with a hollow expression. Her clothes looked like they were from another era, almost like an old, torn gown. I barely registered it at first. She disappeared in an instant, but I was left sitting there, feeling this icy chill in my bones. My heart was pounding, and I felt frozen, staring out at the empty garden. In shock and disbelief, I grabbed my phone and replayed the video, and there she was, clear as day, just standing there, staring straight at the car before vanishing again. I checked outside, but the garden was empty, silent. I couldn't bring myself to stay alone in the driveway any longer, so I backed out and left, feeling her eyes on me the entire way down the street. I kept that video, but I can't bring myself to watch it again. Every time I start my car in the dark now, I hold my breath, waiting, wondering if she's gonna be there again, watching me from my garden. I was working the night shift as a ticket collector at the public parking lot. It was past midnight, and I was half asleep at the toll booth, with barely any cars coming through. I was mostly zoning out, staring at the empty road, when I noticed headlights approaching. Out of habit, I opened the window of the booth and held out my hand, ready to collect the ticket. But a few seconds went by, and I didn't feel anyone place a ticket in my hand. Confused, I looked over, only to realize there was no one in the driver's seat. I leaned out of the boot for a better look, thinking that maybe the driver had gotten out or leaned over or something. But the car was empty, doors closed, headlights on, and no one on the wheel. My mind was confused, trying to make sense of it. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement inside the car. A dark shape began to shift from the back seat, slowly crawling up towards the front. It was an eerie, shadowy figure, like a silhouette with no features, twisting and dragging itself onto the car roof. It crouched there, hunched, and it was watching me. I stumbled back in shock, adrenaline kicking in, as I sprinted away from the toll booth without looking back. The next day, I learned the entire incident was captured on the security camera. It's blurry, but you can clearly see the empty car, the shadow moving inside it, and me running off into the night. I quit that job soon after and haven't set foot near that parking lot ever again. To this day, I still don't know what that figure was or why it had been waiting in the car. A few years ago, I was working late at the office, wrapping up some projects that were due the next morning. By the time I finished, it was nearly midnight, and everyone else had left hours ago. I was the last one there, so I shut down my computer, double-checked that everything was locked, and finally left the office. As I walked out of the building and into the empty parking lot, I turned to look back at the office windows out of habit, just to make sure everything looked in order. But as my eyes scanned the windows, I just stopped. Behind one of the curtains in the office window, I saw a shadowy figure standing completely still. It was shaped exactly like a person, and it was facing the glass. But there was something deeply wrong about it. The shadow didn't move at all. It didn't shift. Just stood there, motionless, like it was watching me. I blinked, thinking it had to be a trick of the light or something, or maybe just a reflection of something outside. But it didn't disappear. The figure remained eerily outlined against the curtain. I couldn't see any features, just a dark, unmoving silhouette. My mind panicked, trying to rationalize it. I knew I was the last one in the building. I just locked the doors myself, and I was positive no one had been there when I left. The shadow, though, seemed to say otherwise. I wanted to go back inside, but something held me back. A cold dread in the pit of my stomach. I quickly took out my phone and recorded it, thinking that it was just my imagination. But the shadow figure was just still there, standing and watching. The next day, I told a few of my colleagues about it and even showed them the video, hoping that someone might have an explanation. But everyone swore they hadn't been in the office building that late, and no one could explain what I'd seen. I never stayed late in the office again. And every time I pass that window, I feel like something or someone is still standing there, just out of sight, watching me. A few months ago, I was driving through a rural area late at night, with only the light from my car and the dash cam recording the empty road. It was just me, the road, and the miles of trees stretching out on both sides. Suddenly, my headlights caught something strange up ahead. A weird cloaked figure standing perfectly still in the middle of the road. I slowed down, unsure of what to make of it. I sounded the horn, expecting whoever it was to just move. Maybe it was just a prank by some local kids. But the figure didn't budge. It just stood there, shrouded in the dark cloak, completely motionless. Frustrated, I decided to step out of the car to get a closer look, convinced that I'd find some kid hiding under the cloak, trying to scare passing drivers. I approached it and grabbed the cloak and yanked it off in one swift motion. But there was nothing, absolutely nothing. Just an empty, hollow cloak lying crumpled on the road. I was shocked and terrified. I ran back to my car, jumped back into it, and floored it, not daring to look back. The dashcam caught it all, but I haven't dared to watch it again. That stretch of road has a darkness about it, and every time I think about it, I can't shake the feeling that whatever was standing there wasn't entirely human.